I am going to talk to you today about healthy boundaries. Okay. Now, I know that you're all aware. I wrote my book. It's on Amazon. I do know a thing or two about relationships. But I thought today it would be good to know, what does good look like? Because very often we're sort of questioning, is this normal? Is this right? Is this what's supposed to be like in a relationship? And we don't actually know. We haven't always had the best role model relationships to base our standards on, I suppose. And every relationship is different. However, there are some key kind of boundaries that you can have in place. And if you've got them in place, fantastic. If you've got some of them in place, then there's room for improvement. If you've got none of them in place, then maybe we need to have a look at why is that? What is going on that takes you to a place where you aren't actually able to have any boundaries? So healthy boundaries in relationships, because love does not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. There's a quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and it's really a quote that encapsulates what most healthy relationships should look like. Two individuals supporting each other on their distinct journeys, rather than two people who became lost in one another. Much of this comes down to having and maintaining clear boundaries, even within a healthy romantic relationship. And it might seem really obvious, but what are boundaries really? Because we don't get taught about this stuff at school. And we don't get taught why this stuff is important either. And we don't get taught about it at home. So personal boundaries are the limits that we set for ourselves as individuals in relationships. And they protect our sense of personal identity and guard against being overwhelmed by the demands of others. And boundaries are really, really important because they prevent partners from becoming enmeshed. And contrary to the long-held notion that being in an intimate relationship is about two people completing each other, relationships are healthier and more sustainable when each person maintains their own identity, whilst the partnership is built on mutual respect, trust, and growth. So there's a Texan-based psychologist, Marjorie Boucher, who says that she sees most relationships are successful when each person is still very much an independent entity. And couples can come alongside each other and support each other in who they are, which is a much healthier relationship than just two people becoming combined. Two people together is much, much stronger when they're operating to the same end goals, but without overwhelming and suffocating the other person. So boundaries are also used to help signal to other people how we want to be treated and prevent us from feeling used, spread too thin, or in desperate need of defending ourselves. So they don't just stop us from getting resentful and eventually throwing up a barrier. They save us from being a doormat. So that's quite important, really, isn't it? And when boundaries are repeatedly crossed or disrespected, we are able to be more realistic about whether the situation we are in is healthy or not. And that is something that I want you guys to consider today when you're listening to this list of boundaries. Because I think it's very important to know where you want to be in your relationship versus where you are in your relationship. And it's not about lying to yourself. It's not about thinking, oh, this won't last forever. I love them. They'll be, I'll save them. You won't save them. They're beyond saving, honey. You have to look for yourself. You have to do what you need to do for you. You can't be responsible for anybody else. You have to be responsible for you. And if you have children that are still dependent on you, then you can be responsible for them. I'm so sorry. I've been up very early this morning, dropping man-child off somewhere. Right. Anyway, knowing the importance of boundaries in a romantic context. So I've got you 4 tips for setting and maintaining healthier boundaries with a partner before we go into the list of healthy boundaries. So the first step to setting healthy boundaries is getting clear on what aspects of your relationship dynamic you and your partner should discuss in the first place. And for couples, this likely will include sexual boundaries, emotional boundaries, and boundaries around external friendships. And a couples counsellor can help in discussing those boundaries if needs be. And it's beneficial to discuss our sexual boundaries and needs regardless of whether it's a new or well-established relationship, because they help us feel safe in a very intimate, vulnerable position. And couples will want to revisit the discussion even after time has passed, as they may want to explore different things sexually at different points in the relationship, or just check in to make sure that each person is still on the same page. Emotional boundaries may feel a bit more abstract, so setting these include creating limits for how a couple behaves during tough or combative moments when you're arguing. So, for example, you may rule out yelling or name calling. You might insist that there's a mutual expectation that this boundary is not to be crossed, and those expectations should be set in advance so that when difficult or painful emotions come out, there are ground rules on how to proceed, so that you can have a conversation and not a shouting match. And a partnership also needs boundaries around external relationships, like with friends, at work, or with family. And for one partner, innocent flirting with co-workers may be a deal breaker. Another might have concerns about spending time away from the relationship with friends, and how will family time be handled. And it's really important that those boundaries are made clear so that people in the relationship continue to feel safe and understood. So that was the first step of knowing where they need to be created. Then we look at clarifying your personal boundaries to yourself first. So if you are unsure what your personal boundaries are, it's going to be hard for others to follow them. So to help you figure out your own limits, start by tuning into your emotions and thoughts. Our emotions and thoughts serve as a kind of compass to where boundary lines need to be drawn. And emotional discomfort, so when you're feeling really uncomfortable emotionally, that can show an area where a boundary is needed, whilst happy emotions let us know we're on the right track. So it's about tapping into what we value and non-negotiably in all facets of our individual lives, and whether that's maintaining a hobby on the weekends or spending a certain holiday with loved family members, to hone in on your special and specific values. And you can ask yourself questions like, what is important to me? What are my needs? What are my traditions and hobbies that I want to keep? Am I always striving for personal satisfaction and happiness? And then the third step of this is communicating your boundaries. Now, this one is the tough one when you're in an abusive relationship. So hear me out, and then we'll talk about some of that at the end, okay? So in a normal relationship, once you've had the time to reflect on your boundaries, the next step is communication. And your partner probably isn't a mind reader, and they shouldn't have to guess your boundaries, although we seem to somehow magically think that they should. And if you both state them clearly in advance, and when your partner crosses a boundary in the moment, it's easier said than done, mind you, but as close to the moment as possible. Saying no or speaking out the truth when someone upsets us might feel really scary at first, but when we face our fears and express our thoughts and feelings openly to the person that gets upset or pushes our boundaries, takes us over the edge, pushes us too far, when we get to say no, when we get to stand up for ourselves, then internal healing occurs. And when we show up for ourselves, we provide an opportunity for those around us to show up too. So by becoming a better rounded human being, we help the people around us become better rounded beings. And it's possible to have boundary conversations when things are going well, because that's before there's a problem. But there will be times when we need to remind our partner about our boundary issues, inevitably, and it's going to happen in the heat of the moment. But you need to be able to communicate those boundary violations without blaming your partner. So you need to obviously have that boundary in place that you can communicate when a boundary is crossed. And it's much better to say, I feel hurt and misunderstood in this conversation, than to say, you made me feel hurt because of the way you talked to me. And the former is simply an expressing an opinion, and the latter is blaming your partner for the hurt feelings. And then the fourth one is taking responsibility for your needs, because similar to holding a non-blaming stance when enforcing your boundaries, it's important to take responsibility for what's yours in the relationship. So part of the reason we have boundaries is so that we can take care of our own stuff, and we don't have to wait for somebody else to solve all of our problems. They are not our savior, they're our partner. And this means owning the choice that you make, even when they are unintentional and they may have contributed to a painful situation. And in addition, you don't make your partner guess how you're feeling or why you might be feeling violated. Each of you has your own thoughts and feelings, and each person is responsible for putting them into words in order to be understood. And if your boundary has been violated, you must say so at the first appropriate available opportunity, in a way that communicates your feelings in a non-blaming way and addresses what you hope will be different in subsequent situations. So boundaries can make or break a romance, and they can set yourself up for success by taking the time to investigate what your values are and clearly communicating your values and your boundaries, and holding both you and your partner accountable for maintaining the boundaries that are going to keep you both happy, healthy, and together for a long time. Okay. So those are some thoughts about boundaries, but I'm going to give you some healthy examples. Okay, so I'm going to give you some healthy boundary examples so that you are able to compare it to what you're currently experiencing and draw your own conclusion as to what that means, and make your own decision as to where to go after you become aware of that situation. So saying no. And you might find it easier to not say no, to sacrifice your own needs for your partners out of a fear of upsetting them. However, if they are something of you that goes against your principles, disrespects your time, or forces you to sacrifice something important, it is okay to say no. And it doesn't have to be harsh, but learn to say it assertively. Refusing to take blame. Sometimes your partner may place the blame on you out of hurt or guilt, and this behavior does not mean that anger is your fault. Do not let them skirt responsibility by manipulating your emotions. Acknowledge their pain, let them know that you are there for them, but assert that you will not accept responsibility for their actions. Number 3, expecting respect. You deserve, this is key, you deserve kindness and loving communication. If you feel that your partner is speaking from an unjustified anger or with a disrespectful tone, you are within your right to remove yourself from the scenario. Just simply remove yourself from the scenario. Let them know that if they want to have a conversation, it must come from a place of respect. And number 4, dictating your own feelings. So when you're part of a couple, opinions and emotions can be blurred. And certainly in a narcissistic relationship, then you become kind of like overwritten with their words and their feelings. And you need to learn to decipher your feelings from your partner's, split them, and their perception of your feelings. And if they speak for you, correct them, and kindly ask that they do not dictate your emotions for you. Number 5, finding your identity outside of the relationship. So codependency can lead to a melding of identities, and I becomes we and the you gets lost in the mix. And remember that you are not just one half of a whole, but your own person with passions, interests, and a vibrant intelligence. It's okay to have a sense of self separate from your partner. In fact, it's healthy. Number 6, accepting help. Some people are more independent and find difficulty relying on their partner in tough times. If you need help, it can be good to establish where your boundaries are and what you do and do not want help with. You may ask for help with finances but need space when dealing with family issues, and this balance can be a delicate tango, but open communication leads to a smoother rhythm. Number 7, asking for space. Sometimes we just need to be alone. When we're in upheaval emotionally in a relationship, it can seem like you are never alone. And asking for space may feel to your partner like you're pushing him or her away, even though that's not your intention. So you need to establish the boundary with them that alone time is perfectly healthy and a key to maintaining your own identity and sorting through your problems. If you aren't clear about needing space, your partner might feel neglected or that you're ignoring them or even avoiding them. If you establish up front that you like to spend time alone, it will help later on. Communicating discomfort, number 8. So whether your partner tells a hurtful joke or crosses a physical line, learning to articulate your discomfort clearly will help in setting your boundaries. Let them know what you will not tolerate and plan a course of action if he or she crosses that boundary. Phrases like, please don't do that, it makes me uncomfortable, or I don't like it when you use that word, touch me there, use that tone, are clear, they're concise. So you need to be very, very clear when somebody is crossing your boundary about communicating that you're not happy with that. And it's not about them, it's about you. So I feel really uncomfortable when you said that story about so-and-so. That made me feel really I felt quite uneasy about that. So, I love you, honey, but you know what? That just kind of creeps me out when you touch that. Ugh. Yeah, just you have to just say it sometimes. Number 9, sharing mutually. It's okay to take things slowly at the beginning of a relationship, and don't feel pressured to share everything up front or feel that you have to share first for your partner to open up. And vulnerability should be mutual, and with both people checking in and creating a safe space for sharing. So number 10, sticking up for yourself. In an argument, you or your partner may say things that are regretted and that are mean or ugly, and establish that you won't accept him or her speaking to you in that way. You have intrinsic worth and you deserve to be spoken to kindly. And make it known that you need an apology and that you need your partner to acknowledge the hurt that their words have caused. So number 11, choosing to be vulnerable. Vulnerability should not be demanded. Of course, it's an important component of a good, healthy relationship, but you shouldn't ever feel pressured to open up about a difficult topic in any stage of your relationship. You share your feelings and experiences on your terms, and you should feel safe to communicate that you may need time to discuss specific topics or memories. Your right to privacy. There are many levels of privacy, and you may share a home computer but keep your email password to yourself. Your choice is reasonable. There's your belongings, your thoughts, your texts, your journal entries, and even topics as big as past relationships or traumas. They are yours to share or not share at your discretion. Okay? They are yours to share or not share at your discretion. You choose. You get to choose. And infringement on those boundaries is just not acceptable. So number 13, the ability to change your mind. So your choices are your decision, and as is the option to make a new one. If you change your mind, then there's no reason that you should be made to feel guilty for it. Be clear with your reasoning, or simply to state that you decided to change your mind. Of course, being open is important, but it should happen on your terms. And number 14, your right to your own time. So you get to dictate where and with whom you spend your time, alone or apart. Maybe you don't love going to Monday night football. Establish that Monday nights are your alone time, or your weekly wine night with your pals, or maybe you need to be by yourself for a few days after a big fight. You are perfectly within your rights to state that that's what you need. You don't need to ask for permission. You get to choose your own time. And number 15, the need to handle negative energy. So a personal boundary can also be one that you set for your own behavior. It's important to navigate unhealthy anger and resentment so that you aren't bringing negative energy into a shared space. And if you can't let it out on your own, then ask for help. Share a negative emotion and lighten the toxic feelings by being honest about your mood, because once you start being honest about it, then everything changes. When you start being able to communicate these things very, very without blame, without criticism, without fear of repercussions, then being able to share whatever is on your mind is beautiful. And number 16, the freedom to express sexual boundaries. So the beginnings, when you first start having physical intimacy with a new partner, it's exciting, but navigating personal boundaries in sex can be really awkward or even scary. And when you talk about them openly, communicating your needs or discomforts, it's essential. Although, I'm the first to admit that finding the words can be a bit tricky. And remember that every step you take requires enthusiastic consent from your partner. Consent. You should never feel pressured into anything. Talk with each other regularly, share fantasies and discuss boundaries. Honesty and vulnerability are powerful. And then we have the freedom to express spiritual boundaries, because your beliefs are your own, no matter how much you may or may not have in common with your partner in terms of spirituality or religion. You and your significant other should respect each other's beliefs. You should foster and encourage each other's spiritual growth and be open to learning about the other's culture or faith. The right to remain true to your principles. Setting a boundary with yourself that your principles remain in place no matter who you are dating. Of course, you can change your mind as your conversations with your partner open new doors to new ideas, but you shouldn't ever feel pressured to adopt his or her stance out of fear of upsetting them, or that you think they wouldn't like it, or I'm not comfortable talking about this. You have to become comfortable about talking about all of this stuff. And number 19, the ability to communicate physical needs. So you need to learn to communicate what your body needs. Are you a vegetarian and you don't want meat in the house? Are you an early riser who needs to be in bed before 10? Then make sure your partner respects your physical needs by not making loud noises or watching TV late into the evening. And then on the other hand, you learn about your significant other's boundaries. If they prefer a later bedtime, work out an arrangement rather than pressuring them to go to sleep before their biological clock allows them to. Come to a compromise. Come to an arrangement. Okay, I'll go to bed at 10. If you want to stay up till 12, that's fine. But if you could keep the volume low or use a headset, that would be fantastic, because that'll allow me to get to sleep. And I will wake up in the morning, and I know that I'll wake up earlier than you, and I will be kind of considerate when I am getting ready for the day ahead by keeping the noise to a minimum and trying to do my ablutions out of hearing if possible. So number 20, your right to your material possessions. Deciding what to share and what to keep for yourself is never an easy task, and some couples open joint bank accounts while others don't, and they have financial independence. And material and financial boundaries are commonplace in every relationship, and it is whatever works for each couple, because there is no right or wrong. There's just what works and what doesn't work for you. And last but not least, the ability to manage your own time. So managing your own time is learning to manage your time in a way that does not disrespect your significant other's time. So if you're single, you can put off doing the dishes as long as you want. Yeah, you could leave it till 3 days before you did the dishes. But in a relationship, your time is not just your own. And if you agree to date to a date at 8 p.m. at a certain place, it's essential to stick to your word, because you have to learn to manage your time respectfully even when you're alone, because it's important to have that open communication and mutual respect, that if you say you're leaving at 10 and you'll be with them by 10:30, don't be still getting out of the shower at 10 because you woke up late. There's no excuse for that. You have alarm clocks, you have phones. You could even, if you don't have any of that, you could even arrange for somebody to phone you at certain times so that you get up in time. But it's important to be respectful of the other person, but also to communicate, because they are not mind readers. They cannot see what's in your head. There's no little window up there that they open just to see what makes you tick, because it's one thing to know what your boundaries are, but it's a whole different ball game to establish them, and especially if that means unlearning bad habits. And it's really important that you try really hard to avoid getting angry when setting boundaries, because we often don't know what our boundaries are until someone crosses them. However, there are better ways to communicate to your partner what they are, and you can find a calm moment. And if a partner crosses a boundary, work through your anger first in a safe and healthy way. Take time to yourself and write down what disturbed you. Define the boundary and wait until a peaceful moment to have a conversation. Be assertive. State your boundaries clearly and effectively. Make it known that you will not tolerate that boundary being crossed and why it bothers you. Be loving. Don't threaten your partner or speak out of anger. Let him or her know that you are setting your boundaries out of trust and love for them and for yourself. And reciprocate. Be sure to ask your partner what boundaries they need to establish and do your best to honour them. Model the behaviour that you want to see in your partner. Be the person that you want them to be. Yeah? So it can be scary, and it is allowing a vulnerability and an openness to be able to admit what you need from your partner. I was going to say other person, other half, but they're not your other half. You are you, they are they, and you need to come together to discuss these things and kind of respect and value the boundaries that you have set in a loving partnership. But if you do that, ultimately you'll find yourselves closer than ever, because showing your loved one that you are willing to set boundaries will help them share their boundaries with you. And it might take time and hard work, but then the best things always do. And it's really important that we learn from this and that we take from this, because the relationships that we have seen growing up may not be the relationships that we want to have ourselves personally. And to be able to have something different, we need to do something different. Now, I've taken inspiration for both sort of parts of that discussion from liveboldandbloom.com and also talkspace.com. Because they're both a magnificent source of information, and they gave me the information that I needed to get to you guys, that I felt was really important to share. So I do believe that boundary setting is absolutely key, and learning how to, first of all, establish a boundary. What is a boundary? What do I want? Coming from a relationship where there were no boundaries, where basically all of those would have been just kind of like no. For me, it's really important to have those boundaries in place in a healthy relationship, because I don't ever want to go down that road again. And I think, had I read something like this before we actually got to the point where we'd split, I think it might have opened my eyes a little bit more as to the situation that I was in, because we class so many things as normal, because that's our life, that's what we've lived for years. We've kind of become indoctrinated into this is normal, this is the life we live, this is normal, and it isn't always normal. And other people can see it, but we're too close to the word and we can't see the trees, and we don't see it because we're so deeply enmeshed. If you want to talk to me about any of this, then please feel free to put something in the comments. Please feel free to message me. Please feel free to come to my website and have a quick look. It's www.jennyrock.com, and sorry, scratch that, www.jennyrockcoaching.com. I am so rubbish today. And if you want to send me a message through the website, that is absolutely fine.